Hey, it's Samantha Hartley of the Profitable Joyful Consulting Podcast. This season, we have been talking about consulting success metrics, like ways to measure your business. And one of the amorphous things that my clients will very often ask me for metrics around is follow-up. Like, how often should I follow up? When and how many times should I follow up? So I wanted to share some exact numbers with you today in this episode. And before I do, I wanted to begin with a concept because I have a lot of strong opinions about follow-up in general. And the first one is based on kind of a weird analogy, which is this concept in physics called Schrödinger's cat. So hang with me. I promise this will be relevant to you. Schrödinger's cat is this physics experiment in which, or it's really a thought experiment, it doesn't really happen, in which Erwin Schrödinger posits that if you have a box and you put some radioactive material inside of the box, and then you put a hypothetical cat into the box, it's a hypothetical cat, no cats are harmed in this story, and then you close it in, the poisonous substance should cause the cat to expire. However, we don't know if the cat is alive or dead unless we open the box, right? While the box is closed, like he may be alive, he may be dead, we don't know. But if we do open the box, then we know for sure. That's why for a while, when the box is closed, the cat can be considered to be both alive and dead, right? Two realities, two truths can exist. To me, this is leads to a thing that I have noticed in follow-up called Schrödinger's client, in which we avoid follow-up because as long as we don't force the client to a decision, we simultaneously have a yes and don't yet have a no, even though both of those possibilities are happening at that time. So I began thinking about this because I have a client, Tina, that's what we're going to call her today, who had a really, really long follow-up process with one of her clients. So she had done a small project and was offering a transformational engagement, made the offer, and then was waiting for the client to give a response. The client took an amazingly long time to make a decision. There was like taking a vacation and a bunch of other stuff. And Tina was very hesitant to check in and actually nail them down to a decision. She'd been working with all kinds of players in the company. There was also had just like overgiven and really, really, really wanted and needed this engagement to go through. So didn't want to check in, finally checked in and heard, it's actually too big. Can we do something smaller? So she's already disappointed. She goes away, makes a smaller thing and gives that to the client. It has an agreed time that the client is going to get back to her, doesn't hear back from the client. And it's like hesitates, does not want to go and hear a response, but does finally follow up and hears, is this really the smallest thing you could do? Isn't there anything smaller? Like, what's the minimum you could do for us? So super annoyed at this point. Tina goes away, puts together the smallest possible thing that she would be at least not completely hateful about doing for the client and takes that offer to the client. Same thing continues. Client doesn't get back promptly. She really hesitates, does not want to go, and finally hears back from the client, a very terse no. It's a no. After all of that time and after all of Tina's contribution and after all of this, everything, it was a no, which I think if we zoom out from the situation, we could see coming from 100 miles away. And so really the hesitation around follow-up was probably intuitively, she knew it was a no and she just didn't want to hear no. So as long as she doesn't follow up, the cat is alive, right? This client is a potential yes, and yet it never ends up a yes. It's not rare, this situation. I saw it with another one of my clients who tolerated a very long sales process with a client who was too small to be thinking about it this long. Sometimes when we get into big organizations, they take forever to make a decision. This was not that case. And we teach our clients how to treat us. So you don't want to tolerate any behavior in the sales process that you don't want to have once you're working with a client. So this is Wanda. She had at least 3 meetings with the client, told me about them. Hey, have this really interesting potential client, have had already 3 meetings. 2 weeks later, she and I talked. She says, okay, now I'm going to have my 5th meeting with them. And I said, no, Why? What is the fifth meeting about? Well, they're just taking a really long time to make a decision. And I said, do you want to work with a client who takes 5 meetings to make a decision about whether to work with you? I mean, what is the big problem? Like, what's the big deal? What is so earth shaking that they cannot make this decision? We, all of us, we deserve to work with decisive clients. This cannot be such a consequential decision for them. All right. And if it is a consequential decision, that's fine, but they can still make it quickly. So I said, I think you should call them and tell them, I'm not going to work with you. She can say it politely. Hey, turns out my schedule, while you were thinking about it, my schedule filled up. I'm no longer available. Wish you a nice life. Right. So while she was tolerating that long process, it was simultaneously a yes and also a no. And until she cut them off, as one should, you got to cut bait when the client is taking that long. Until she cut them off, it was potentially a yes. But I don't think anybody wants to work with that kind of client. So in general, when we're thinking about follow-up, I want you to think about whether you even want clients who are going to require you to be this way with them. Never chase clients down. You don't want to teach them that you will chase them down. Like, you're not mommy. They have to have their act together when they come to work with you. So on the topic of we teach clients how to treat us, I want you in your perfect client profile to have a line that says, my perfect clients are decisive. They make big decisions thoughtfully and quickly or in a timely manner, like whatever that needs to say. Importantly, we all need to be in integrity with that. And therefore, we also need to make big decisions in a timely manner. Yes, thoughtfully. I'm not saying don't think about it. I'm not saying, responsively just go in 5 seconds to what the first thing that comes to your mind. And I'm also saying, you think long, you think wrong. That's a quote from one of my favorite people who is, or philosophers. He was a pitcher for the New York Yankees. I love this expression. You think long, you think wrong. A lot of us know what to do intuitively, and then the longer we ruminate on this decision, the less it aligns with our highest interests. A lot of times what ruminating on a decision means running it past our fears. And then we talk ourselves out of something that we were called to or led to. If somebody is coming to you to talk with you about working with you, something called them to you, something prompted that. And sometimes it's just for them to be able to have a conversation about this, and they said something to you and you said something to them, and then we all go away and the world is better for it. And they weren't a fit, or it wasn't the right time, or whatever needed to happen. However, a lot of times when somebody comes to you, it's because they have, like, your message has resonated with them. They've been referred, like they're in need of something. And I don't want you ever to sell in anybody who isn't a fit for you. However, the people who are a fit for you, you should recognize them, they should recognize you, and then they should take action on it. So I'm a fan of decisions that people get to quickly. I think sometimes decisions need a deadline. And in both of these cases, with Tina and Wanda, those decisions needed to have a deadline, after which the consultant, the person in our position, said, we're not going any further with this. That was my best offer, or I think you've got enough information at this point. I'm just going to need you to go ahead and make a decision. It's fair for us to expect this of our clients. I'm a big believer that we start coaching our clients. We begin to advise them as soon as they enter our world, as soon as we start in conversations with them. So they don't have to become our clients to benefit from the wisdom that we can offer them. So a really good piece of wisdom is, I need my clients to be decisive. Go ahead and for today, let's go ahead and cancel this meeting. But in the future, if you change your mind and you feel like you're ready to take action, then get back in touch with me. So assert that boundary so that you are not wasting time with indecisive clients who are, they're not going to change. This behavior is going to continue, and you don't want to tolerate it, not in the sales process, and certainly once they're working with you. So before I get into the specific metrics of follow-up, like when and how we should do it, I just want to say one thing, which is if you suck at follow-up, do not work with clients who require it. Okay. We all really need to play to our strengths, and nobody said you had to be great at it. Okay. If you don't have the attention span for follow up, if it annoys you to follow up, if any kind of follow up whatsoever makes you feel like you're chasing somebody, do not do it. I worked with a consultant once who never did any follow up ever. Just had a full enough pipeline and was like, listen, my clients will find me. I don't do any follow up ever. I was like, respect. I'm probably in the middle of this road. Like I do follow up sometimes. I have totally had people who, there's a difference between not no, but not now, and people who cannot make a decision. So I'm going to explain that. Had somebody who spoke with me and was like, I like what you're doing. And I know I need that. I can tell it's not the right time. So yes to the thing, to the offer, but no to the timing. That's different. I'm talking about people who are like, the timing is right. You've made the offer and they just like can't, right? They can't make a decision. They can't move forward. They cannot take action. And you're not going to enjoy that kind of a client. So the first kind of a client who was not a no, but not now, I've like just lightly checked in every 6 months, had one of those that lasted a year and a half or 2 years between like first contact and getting back in touch with me. I will tell you that somebody has gotten in touch with me after, it seems like it was almost exactly a year. No, since 2019. Got in touch with me this week after 2 years. However, who did the follow-up? Not me. That client said, I remembered you and I'm getting back in touch. So she's done the follow-up. That is the kind of client I want to work with, right? Responsible, said no, not no, but not now, and then reached out when the time was right. Okay. This can happen. I offer that because I want you to know you don't have to be the one who can do the chasing down. Sometimes, not just sometimes, but often with your perfect clients, they can have the initiative to do the follow-up on their own. And wouldn't that be a pleasure that instead of you chasing them down, they reached out to you? So again, if you suck at follow-up or just do not want to be in that business, don't work with clients who require follow-up. Because trust me, they're not going to just require it. In the sales process, they're going to require it the whole time you're working with them. And you're going to be annoyed unless you're just way more patient than I am. So here's the timing on how you can do follow-up. So there's at least three. So I'm going to show you 3 today examples of follow-up opportunities. So the first one is leads. Leads are people, I'm going to say, who have already made contact with you and expressed an interest in your services. So maybe you reached out to them and they responded, yes, let's talk. Maybe they filled out a form on your website. Maybe they called you. Maybe they were referred to you, but you've made contact and they have said something specific around interested in your services. Okay, so that's a hand raised to say, I would like to talk to you about what you do. That's a lead. People who are in your field or, and I mean energetic field, or people who are like your connections on LinkedIn. I don't mean anybody like that. I mean, they've taken this step to say, I'm interested in your services. That's the first category. After that first contact, if you miss them, if you are not able to kind of pick up the contact once they have contacted you the first time, then I think 3 to 5 times is plenty. So here's how that can look. You get an email from somebody who says, hey, Barbara said you're amazing and I'd like to talk with you about possibly working with you. When would be a good time? You go back and forth and then things go quiet. Maybe you couldn't find a time. Maybe you don't actually get a response. Whatever happens and this falls through. I think a good timing on this is after that's gone quiet, a few days, like the next week maximum, a week maximum, you can check in and say, hey, we were going to schedule something and then things went quiet. Did you still want to do that? Then I think if you don't hear anything another week, you can do another ping, similar message. Hey, just wanted to check in case, blah, blah, blah. It is okay to say, listen, don't want to bug you. If I don't hear from you again, I'm just going to leave the ball in your court. Now, I said 3 to 5. So this is 3. The fourth one can be a month or a few months later. And the fifth one can be like 6 months later. Sometimes people reach out because they're in transition and it's actually chaotic. And they don't even have time to respond. Sometimes the answer is like complex. Look, don't project onto them a reason for this. And I'm very forgiving of people in this phase, because you never know. This is not indecisive. This can sometimes be like swamped and can't quite get to you. I know it seems like they can't even like write a response email. Sometimes people can't. Sometimes it's like, I needed to tell you something. Or if you're like me, it goes off the homepage of your Gmail and you never see it again. So a thing which can really help you is to change up the media of your follow-up responses. So if they first called you, your response should be to call them back. Your first follow-up should be another call. After that, you can try sending them a LinkedIn in case they're a little more active on LinkedIn, or you can try sending them an email. So change up the medium, mix up your media here, and let them know, hey, just sending over here in case this gets through to you better than through whatever the other medium was. Okay. I think that's a fair way to do things. And then, as I said, like a month later, and then like 6 months, hey, we spoke to you 6 months ago and we never connected. Just wanted to check in and see if things had calmed down since then, and you wanted to talk. That requires some organization to do, meaning we have to know when that call was, and we have to make a note to ourselves and things like that. The tools that I use for this, I have a paid email platform that sits on top of my Gmail called Superhuman, which I love. It's $30 a month. Highly recommend it. A feature that it has is similar to what HubSpot has and what a Boomerang does for Gmail, and that's a reminder feature. So I can just set a reminder of like a month from now or 6 months from now. 6 months from now, that reminder will come up. I'll sometimes have a little note on there for myself. And then that comes up and I'm like, oh, I was going to follow up with so-and-so. It's great. And then I send this thing and it's effortless. So I don't love follow up. And very often, as I mentioned, don't follow up. However, this makes it so easy, so stupid easy that I can do it, that I go ahead and follow up with people. So that is a tool that I recommend for you if you wanted to have super easy follow up for yourself. A caveat, again, I would say is you're going to follow up until you hear a no. If any time during this sequence they say, thanks, changed my mind, cool, you're out, right? You can remove them from your database or disconnect with them on LinkedIn, whatever you want to do. Or you can say, listen, you never know, they might change their mind. Sometimes people take another option and then they're sorry about that option and they come back to you a little while later. So, whatever you want to do. The thing I want to emphasize here is cultivate the relationships that you want to have with the kind of people that you want to have. So if the whole thing was completely pleasant and you had a good feeling about them, cultivate that relationship. If the whole thing was kind of weird and you're like, oh, great, thanks for like rattling my cage and then running away, then go ahead and delete them. Like, you get to decide whether you want to be connected to somebody or not, and don't feel an obligation to like, oh, every single scrap that comes to me I have to hang on to. Like, have an abundance mindset. There's an abundance of potential clients and an abundance of people who need what you do, and the right person's going to show up. Trust me, it'll happen. Trust yourself, it will happen. So the next kind of leads that we're going to look at, or the next kind of follow-up we're going to look at, that was leads. And the next one is going to be a post-sales call, right? You've had a sales call with someone, a sales meeting, whatever's the thing. Here's the key. You're going to agree before you leave this meeting about what the next step is. When am I going to follow up with you? Meaning day and time, and then usually medium. The best way to do this is to make an appointment for another meeting. What usually will happen is before that meeting, if they're a no, they'll cancel the meeting and be like, we're a no. And they'll email you, or they might even call you, but they'll cancel that meeting because they're already a no. If they're a yes or a maybe, they will keep that meeting, and then some next steps will take place during that call. So the best way to follow up after a sales meeting or a sales call in B2B corporate, this doesn't go for internet marketing, but in B2B corporate, the best way to follow up is with a meeting that's on everyone's calendar, like a scheduled Zoom or a scheduled phone call that goes on everyone's calendar. And by everyone, I mean anybody involved in the sales process, you and them and somebody else from their company, whatever that is. So that's follow-up step number one. Now, if anything goes awry with that, like they cancel that and they don't say it's a no, let's say they can't make that meeting and they're like, we're not prepared with an answer yet, but we can't do this meeting anymore. Make another meeting. sometimes that process will go awry, and then you're in this limbo land again of where you're following up. They can go silent during that time period, like all kinds of things can happen. As I mentioned, you have the right at any time here to bail and decide, I don't want to work with a client who requires this kind of, corralling and babysitting. However, if you feel like, no, I have a good feeling about them and I know they're just swamped and I really, really can help them, then you can do the follow-up. So at this point, then you're going to follow up with them after the everything has fallen through. You're going to follow up with them on a weekly basis. It can be 3 to 5 times, 1 week, second week, third week. The third time, and maybe if you're persistent, it can be the 5th time. It's okay to say, listen, I don't want to keep pestering you. Let me know if this is a no-go and I won't stay in touch with you anymore. However, if you're still in progress or working on it internally, I will follow up with you at some point in the future. Can you just let me know which way or the other? If you were ghosted on that note, then I would go ahead and step back and be like, sounds like they just can't make a decision at this time. And I almost do not care what size of engagement this is, because again, I just don't want you to be in a situation where you have to deal with this kind of client. But usually 3 to 5 times, and that kind of I'm pulling back, this is my last note, will get you a response at all. I find the fastest and easiest responses that to get are if you send them a note that has like an ABC option. Hey, I'm just checking in as agreed. Remember, make sure there's always that agreement about how and when you're going to follow up. Just checking in as agreed. Can you just let me know? And then I like ABC option. A, it's a no. B, we're still thinking about it. C, it's a yes. We just haven't had time to get back to you. Something like that. So that all they have to do is literally send you back a letter. One of those. I try to make it easy for people because that should be like the way that they respond. And then if they cannot respond to that, then we're in the territory of terrible client. So the last situation is once you've given them a proposal. And this is where so much is at stake. Like you have skin in the game because you've put the effort into it, and they should have put in a lot of effort as well, meaning they've thought about it. They've shared information with you. There's been a lot of time spent together. And so this one is very similar to the second one where you're going to agree to follow up. I just feel like it's important for you to have the discernment around when to stop. It's hard to have the Schrödinger's client situation. It's hard to declare that I think this thing is dead. But at a certain point, you're going to have an intuition that probably you'd had all along, but you'd maybe been overriding, which is, I don't think this thing is going to go anywhere, and I'm just not going to do this anymore. It's okay to communicate to the client, hey, if anything changes, reach out to me, but for now, I just have to stop. And it's also okay to be like, listen, I'll follow up with you as long as you need me to. I can just check in on a weekly basis, but I just need to know, is it still a maybe? Like, are you still thinking about it? Is there still a possibility? Remember, if the entire work that you did with this client going forward into the future for the year or more that you're going to be working with them followed this same pattern, would you still want them as a client? I sure hope that engagement is priced high enough that it's going to be worth it for you to have to do this dedicated follow-up. So these are the structures and the numbers that I use around follow-up. I just feel like it's philosophical and it's related to a few things. What your definition of a perfect client is, and identify that perfect client. It's related to an abundance mentality and the belief that, listen, this one isn't it. I'm going to go find 3 more unless I waste away waiting on this one. And it's related to how hard decisions are. For years, I thought I was a bad decision maker because sometimes decisions were really heavy for me. And I realized that actually, if I tune in and I have the right information, I can make decisions quickly. For me, intuitive decisions work. For some other people, and maybe they're fact finders, like they need a lot of information to make a decision, but there should come a point when they've gathered enough facts. If they need help from you, meaning a deadline or your refusal to continue to talk with them, then that's okay. Like that's okay for you to create a boundary around that decision in order to help them. And I hope that will prevent you from ever feeling like you're having to chase a client, because that should never happen. Before I go, I want to share with you that I work exclusively actually with consultants, business to business consultants, on how to make these kinds of decisions and how to create the profitable and joyful consulting business that they dream of. In my work, I help them to find and work exclusively with perfect clients. I also help them to structure their business so that they're working on transformational engagements, not one-offs and not short-term projects. And when we do that, they dramatically increase their revenues. Most of my clients will double. A lot of them you'll hear about who have done 5x of their revenues within 1 year, within the first year that we work together. So there's amazing growth that is possible for you when you restructure your business model. And also, as you can hear, when you change your beliefs around how your business can work and what you need to put up with, or how you need to be in order to create a business that you are going to love. I have a program called The Path to 2 Million. And if that sounds like it might be of interest to you, then I would love to share more information and speak with you. You can find out more and apply for a conversation to talk with me at my website, samanthahartley.com. Just go to the contact page, fill that out, and we'll be in touch. With that, I am wishing you a profitable and joyful consulting business. Thanks for watching. I'd appreciate if you'd like this episode, and if you enjoyed the show, why not subscribe? Be sure to click the bell to get notified when new episodes drop.